Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a weekly deep dive into the world of college admissions.
My name is Linda, and I'm originally from Michigan, now living in the St. Louis metro area. I'm a college coach with School Match for You and have a daughter at University of Chicago.
I'm Lisa, and I'm a clinical psychologist and college counselor. I have a daughter in college, a daughter in high school, and a son in middle school. After 30 years in Chicago, we recently moved to North Carolina.
My name is Mark. I'm a college coach in Atlanta and the parent of two daughters. Karis, a graduate of Davidson College, and she is the founder of the Spanish tutoring company, SpanishHelpToday.com. And Joy has a bachelor's degree from the University of Georgia and a master's degree from North Carolina State University. She works in private practice in Raleigh as a mental health therapist. And I'm so blessed to be able to work alongside both my beautiful daughters at School Match for You, a college counseling firm that I founded in 2010. Good morning, friends. We're going to have a short episode this week. I was going to do a deep dive on the state of college admissions NACAC survey, but I'm just going to focus on one component only. We are 2 days away from November 1st, which is the busiest day in any college admission counselor's year. It's the equivalent of being at April 13th for an accountant. It's the only time when 12:30 a.m. I'm in a meeting. That's right. You're like, Stuck, what are you doing in a meeting at 12:30 a.m.? Well, you guys know I'm a night person. But also California is my biggest state this year. New Jersey last year, this year California. And so it's only 9:30 California time. Now, what you won't see me doing is an 8 a.m. or a 9 a.m. meeting. But this is the only time in the year where I'm in a session. And so just going to touch on test scores only, and then we'll have part 2, the final part of Chris Chilbert's interview on what you need to know about AI. But let's dive in with what I want to share with you from the State of College Admissions report about one component and one component only today. And that one component is going to be test scores. But before we talk about that, I want to talk to you about how remarkably consistent the different 16 factors are from one year to the next when you look at the NACAC survey. So let's just go through them. Now, you see a little drop off in subject test scores, APIB, because obviously subject test scores are now obsolete. So if you go back to 2012, 5% said they were very important. If you look at 2018, 6% said they're very important. Now only 1%. That's understandable. They're obsolete, so you can't rank them very important. But let's look at work. Work has been over the last, looking at 2012 through the 2018-19 NACAC survey, 1%, 3%, 1%, 3%, 2%, 4%, this time 2%. State graduation exams, 2%, 3%, 4%, 2%, 2%, 2% this time. You see the remarkable consistency. The interview, the importance of the interview. Once again, I'm telling you the percentage of admission officers that said this factor is of considerable importance when making an admission decision. Let's look at interview. 7%, 8%, 4%, 5%, 4%, 6%, 4%. Consistent. High school rank. Now, we know high school rank has gone down because more and more colleges are not reporting rank. So you would expect that to be reflected in this study because this is a longitudinal study. Especially, I'm going back and giving you data from 2012 on. So back in 2012, 13% said rank was of high importance, 15% the following year, 14% the year after that. Then you get to 9%, 9%, 9%, now all the way down to 5%. So once again, that's reflected in the fact that one study I read said that only 26% of students are submitting rank. Now that was not a study, that was Tufts University telling you their numbers. But I think that would be pretty consistent with schools similar to Tufts. Portfolio 5, 6, 7, 6, 5, 6, 5. Once again, that's going to be a select group of applicants. Okay, I'm going to skip test scores that came in 11th out of 16 factors. I'm going to come back to that. I'm just going to make the point of consistency. Extracurricular activities, 7%, 10%, 6%, 8%, 4%, 6%. This year, 7%. Teacher Rex, 15, 14, 15, 11, 7, 14, 11. So you can see these consistent numbers. Counselor Rex, 16, 16, 17, 15, 11, 15, 12. Demonstrated interest, 18, 20, 17, 14, 16, 16, 16. See the remarkable consistency? Some people say, well, it's only a sample size of 185. But yeah, look at the remarkable consistency. And the variation can most likely be explained by sample size error within the margin of error. The essay, 20%, 22, 22, 19, 17, 23, 19. Okay, and we're into the big categories here. Strength of high school curriculum, 65, 64, 60, 52, 51, 62, and 64. All grades. I'm going to start this with 2014 on this one. 60%, 77, 81, 75, 74. And then high school grades in college prep classes, 82, 82, 79, 77, 71, 73, 77. So you see the remarkable consistency, except for one category, test scores. There was a time when I used to share this data with families. I would say, look, don't take it from me. Look at the data. Look at the study. What does it show? And I had a consistent line because it was consistent year in, year out. And I would say grades, rigor, test scores, 1, 2, 3, the three most important things, personal qualities, fourth. Okay, look at the test score data. Check this out. 2012, 56% said test scores were of considerable importance. 2013, 58%. 2014, 56%. Remarkable consistency. They didn't do the test in 15. They didn't do it every single year. 16, 54%. 17, 52%. 18, 46%. 2023, 5%. 5%. The single lowest number before, going back to 2012, was 46%. And that's the only time it had tested under 52. But the test optional movement, we know, is starting to grow, picking up steam. 5% in 11th place. So it's interesting how you can use data to actually know concretely what are the things that matter the most in the college admission process. Having said that, third time I've quoted Janet Rapoli in this month, but I like the quote, at a highly selective college, everything matters. So the most selective schools, if you're not able to get differentiation that much by some of the other factors like grades and rigor, anything can tip the scale. So I don't want to give the impression that test scores are a complete non-factor. You heard the interview with Lee Coffin. They're changing their language from test optional to test recommended. Truth in the matter is there are quite a few other people that think that way, but just haven't gone public with it. But there can be no doubt that test scores have dropped precipitously in the role they are playing in who gets in. And you also see this, by the way, with the GRE, with the LSAT, the GMAT, and the MCAT. It's moved into professional school and grad school evaluations. So just a little data from the 2023 State of College Admissions Survey.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Friends, in the final part of my interview with Chris Chilbert, federal government employee who is an AI specialist and a podcast listener, Chris gives us his recommendations for books and articles to read on AI. Chris tells us what he foresees as the future for AI over the next 5 to 10 years. Chris shares the skill set he looks for when he hires somebody in AI. Chris shares the last thing he wants to share with us about AI that we haven't discussed so far. And I asked Chris if there are any colleges that he feels prepare people extremely well for a career in AI. And Chris goes on the hot seat and he drops some real pearls of wisdom. Listen and enjoy. I want to go back to the conversation about somebody interested in this field. So I'm hearing from you, there's kind of a lot of different paths from a college major standpoint. Comp sci, computer information systems, data analysis, just are a few that would be completely viable paths. Any other advice for someone that's interested in this area that you'd recommend they either do or experience, or things they should either read, or just what would be your advice if someone came along and said, I really want to go into this field? What's your advice for me?
So I would say a few things. I think that I would supplement what you're learning in school with some of because like I said, there's things that are coming out daily. And, I can provide you with a few links if you want to link them to the show notes. But a couple places where I've seen some really good information coming from people, especially going into the business world. So Stanford University has a human-centered AI website that has a lot of great information. There's a lot of research happening there. MIT also has a lot of really good research. It's free and available on their website. There's a major consulting company people may be familiar with, McKinsey. You can sign up for a free newsletter. They have loads of information of how different parts of the economy are adopting AI. So being familiar with that is very helpful, just trying to keep up with it. This past September issue of The Atlantic has a long article where there was an interview with Sam Altman, who is the CEO of OpenAI, which created ChatGPT. I'd say read that. So I would say immerse yourself in this. You're not going to be able to keep up with everything, but I would dedicate, and this is what I do as a professional in this field, I dedicate a portion of my time to making sure that I'm reading articles about this and books about this all the time. So again, there are limitations here, and it's not going to be necessary. We don't know where it's going to go, but it's important to keep up with this, and so that's what my recommendation would be.
No, that's great. That's great. Now, put your crystal ball on. You've already had the caveats and said we kind of don't know where this thing's completely going, and it's changing rapidly. But what are some changes that you do foresee in the next 5 to 10 years?
I'd see you're starting to see some of those. So certain types of jobs will be replaced and are already being replaced by chatbots. For example, certain types of customer service. You're seeing that already. We're probably, many people are already experiencing that. So you see that happening. I think one very interesting area, which is different than ChatGPT, which is the field of robotics, is starting to have certain types of AI built in. So things like optical recognition. So what can robots do that humans may not be as safe to do. So it's changing. There are jobs that may go away and that may be different. The biggest thing I think in the short term is people that are able to figure out ways to help use AI to augment what they can do. One new job, I just saw the job description for it last week, was called a prompt engineer, and what the person would do with that is basically the quality of what you get back from a ChatGPT or a similar type of a tool is dependent on how you form and craft the prompts that you put into it. And people that can learn how to do that better will be able to augment what they do with those type of tools. And so there's more and more of this technology being built into software every day. So being able to learn and adapt it and use these tools, just like anything else, it's a tool to support different types of tasks. I think it's going to just continue in that vein as people will be testing things out, figuring things out, and then over time, I think its use will grow and grow.
Is there a skill set of someone that you feel makes for a good potential hire for AI? Like, is it mathematical ability? Is it intellectual curiosity and research orientation? I mean, and I'm sure you may have hired people, been involved in the hiring process in your role. What are the things that you kind of look for that you think this person's got a lot of potential?
Yeah, all of the above, and I think that the key areas tied to data. So data science is the field which we hire a lot of folks for, and so you can have different backgrounds. So some people may have a major in statistics or backgrounds in mathematics, focusing on probability and statistics and understanding that that's a good area. there are some people that have more of an engineering background, and they're more managing the underlying systems tied to using that. There are people, like I said, there are some folks that will hire though that have they may have an undergraduate degree in something that's less directly technical, but they've done some experience in some areas where they've used the technologies and they can demonstrate that they're comfortable and familiar with it. But I think having some exposure to if you're going to again go down this field, and business analytics is a great major, as Dontrell had talked about for him. I think data science is a great major. There's other different means for those type of things. The mathematical type of majors are very good. Computer science too. So you're seeing it. You're also seeing uses of AI directly with people with software code. I mean, it's not. It's some of the hype is greater than what the reality is today. But you are seeing, for example, these tools being used to generate code, and so so computer scientists and being able to understand how to leverage that. Those are some great majors too. So. I think those are the general areas that I would focus on. So, I guess that's what I would say.
Great. Well, you know the drill. You're about to go on the hot seat here, Chris. You might have forgot about that, but I didn't. But before we do, is there any final thoughts at all on AI? Anything you haven't shared that you want to leave our listeners with? And, if you've covered everything, that's fine. I just always like to give people an opportunity to share anything that maybe they think listeners should know that we haven't had a chance to address by the questions I asked you.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say is like there is a lot of hype out there, and then there is a lot of promise. But and just like anything else, just recognize that these are still emerging technologies, and so I don't expect anything to happen. Some of it is pretty amazing, but adoption is going to take a little bit longer to catch up with that hype. And for all the different predictions, there's also someone with a different prediction. So with the same level of expertise. And so we really don't know for sure what's going to be on the other side of the adoption of some of these types of tools.
I did think of another question. So I think we know that schools like MIT and Stanford and, Georgia Tech and schools like that, they're doing a lot of cutting edge stuff, and, they're producing a lot of probably, great hires for a lot of workforces. But are there any schools that really kind of fly under the radar that you've found, boy, they're really producing some strong people?
I don't know if I'm an expert on the specific schools, and so a lot of the people I hire are a little further along in their career. So I don't know if I can talk to specific schools.
Sure.
I can say that as great as all of those different schools are, I certainly don't necessarily. It doesn't, to me. That's not the biggest thing about having the name of the school is not.
Sure.
Doesn't really influence me too much. Especially if it's not your first job. I don't even look at that at all, to be honest. All right. So
this is actually really important. And I think sometimes that's something people lose track of, all the hype on what college you go to. You're hiring mid-level and senior level people. You're probably looking at the resume and what have you done, at the various places that you're at and that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, in technology, I've got people that went to a technical school, didn't even go to a college, that are in some pretty significant roles, and I've seen that at different organizations too. Sometimes, I'm a huge believer in college and the importance of it. I also recognize that there are different paths to get to where you want to go, and I do value lifelong development more than anything else, I think.
No, I'm really glad you said that. There's the technical route. There's I'm seeing all these programs that Google and these people are offering to sort of take people through their own, badges, certificates, and things like that. And then right where you're at in Greater DC, I know like George Mason, and you have programs like that in the SUNY system, Stony Brook, and some really good programs that aren't necessarily your marquee names that are fantastic.
Yeah, and I would just add the military to that as well, right? So we have some military veterans that have learned some great things through their careers as well.
All right, Chris, let's go. So how do you relax? How do you have fun when you're not in the AI world?
Lots of different ways. One, I like to read, and so I'd like to read while I can. I do like to work out, so I'm the first one up in my household, and so I every single morning I do a meditation and then I do a workout every day, and I don't miss. And to me, that's something that I really had done for a long time, but I reinforced it when the pandemic hit, and we were home, and I realized I needed to do something for myself. So those are my big things.
Yeah, and our listeners can't see the visuals here because it's audio, but Chris looks like he works out over here. You look pretty fit over there to me there.
Yeah, no, it's important to me. I think fitness is important. So I've just tried to make sure I stay in shape. And like I said, and I also think that staying on top of. I read for enjoyment, but I also just read to learn too.
So I can't resist this. Tell us some good books that you've read, for enjoyment, and whatever you want to share. Any books that you think that listeners would probably benefit from?
Well, there's been a couple just that I just started this week. So there's a new one that just got released called Going Infinite, and this is one by Michael Lewis. He talks about the rise of the crypto industry. So I'm not far enough into it yet to be able to say much about it, but that's one I just recently started. I read the book, which might be interesting to some of your listeners. It's called Never Enough: When Achievement Culture Becomes Toxic and What We Can Do About It. It's I think that one was pretty good. I would definitely recommend it. Let's see here. So, from an purely enjoyment book, just pure fiction. I read one called The Covenant of Water this past summer by Abraham Verghese. Pretty incredible book. So, I could go on, but there's
sure. Yeah, no, you're walking Amazon over here. You're dangerous. No, I saw Michael Lewis interviewed on that crypto book, and then I was actually finding that Sam Bankman story fascinating. I guess he was like a whiz kid at MIT, and he was identified as having extraordinary potential and plucked away by some agency that scouts for talent, and kind of fascinating. And any books that would help a layman to understand AI or stuff about AI, anything come to mind, or you're up there reading all that PhD level stuff?
No, I would right now. I would, as opposed to a book, I might just look at some of the articles coming out. And I mentioned the one in the September issue of the Atlantic that goes into that one would be very good. I think it's not getting too much into technology. And I've got, there are some pretty technical books that I've got that go in depth into that. There's one I haven't read. I've seen recommended, Henry Kissinger and Eric Schmidt. So that everybody knows Henry Kissinger. Eric Schmidt was the former CEO of Google. They wrote together. They talk about future of AI. There's another one that I've got on my shelf. I haven't started yet, but I'm looking at it, and it's more on the limitations of AI, and it's called The Myth of Artificial Intelligence. So I do like to read books that both talk about this technology, but I like to see the counterpoint too. And so that one is, you got that counterpoint too, trying to balance the perspective of all the hype. So, but I mentioned earlier the article from Harvard, actually the study by Harvard that Harvard had done with that consulting company. There's a good summary of that was written about a week ago in the Washington Post. They have a writer on AI. So again, there's so many different resources out there. It doesn't take too long to find them. Major news publications. There's the best explanation I've seen about how does ChatGPT work with actually in the Financial Times. I don't know if that's behind their paywall or not, but it's got a really good explanation of it.
And friends, Chris gave us a great list of resources concerning AI, and he also emailed them to me. And so if you check the show notes, you'll see a great list of resources on AI in the show notes. All right, I have a hard one for you and an easy one, although who knows, maybe the easy one will be hard, the hard one will be easy. The hard question is, what advice would your current self give to your 18-year-old self?
Yeah, that's interesting. It's hard to put myself back to where I was as an 18-year-old, right? So you did, um, so that's probably, that is a hard one to kind of think, about. I think that, this relates to something I was talking about earlier, and it's to really, it's advice that I was given, by my father, and it was, you know, if you consider your career more as an adventure, right? And you know that, it's hard to know necessarily what you're going to do, but if every single time that you have an opportunity, you treat it as an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to, to create value, to do something, and uh, you you don't know where that's going to take you, right? And so, and that's the thing that you find. It's very hard to kind of predict out your career. So some people say, "Hey, I want to be, and you to be something at some point down the line. I want to be the CEO of a company. I want to do this or that." I think it's really, it is important to kind of think about where you want to be, but it's also important to kind of just, recognize that your life is going to take a lot of different turns. Make the most of what you have where you are, and even if you find yourself doing something that you don't like doing, or you may not feel like it's the best thing in the world, ask yourself, what can I learn from the situation, and how can I make the situation better, right? And so, sugarcoat it that every single job that you have is going to be great, but you can always learn something from that, whatever you're doing, and you can always use that may apply further down the road. So I found that throughout my career, that's what's happened. And I don't think I would have ever predicted I ended up to where I am today. I'm really happy where I am, but there's no straight path to get there.
Well, that was two questions in one, because I oftentimes like to close up by asking for your advice for students, and you think you gave some sage advice there. So I'm going to close with the lighthearted question. So the DC area where you are is a very popular area for people to visit colleges. There's a lot of people that will do Georgetown, George Washington, American, George Mason, Howard, all have a lot of popularity as well. And, Catholic sometimes gets on people's lists. So a lot of people are coming to DC, and if not, they're coming into DC, and then maybe they're going to see William and Mary or James Madison or, UVA, like University of Richmond, all schools that, aren't too far from DC. So my question for you is this: restaurants. When you go, you got to have a couple restaurants.
Yeah.
So what are your recommendations for restaurants for the people that are visiting DC? Because I know that's going to be a lot of our listeners.
Right. Yeah. So I may not be the best person to ask for that. So
is that because you're so health conscious? You're avoiding.
Well, I do go in even most days I go into the office, and I actually bring my lunch most days. So there's lots of great restaurants. I can. One restaurant that I like that's near my office, it's Founding Farmers. So it's a kind of a higher end comfort food, but I think it's fabulous, and so that's one of my favorite. In the neighborhood I live in, which is kind of close to American University, there's one called Cactus Cantina, and so Tex-Mex type of restaurant. So those are two.
And you got a recommendation on the menu for something? Anything tried and true?
Well, from at the Founding Farmers, I think they shift their menus a little bit. I always go for something like a short rib. They've got different types of good salads too. At the Cactus Cantina, it's your typical Tex-Mex fare. So it's all of it is good. So it's hard to go wrong. Anything that you see is on that menu is great. So I really those are two that I would recommend.
Chris, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you reaching out. I oftentimes refer to us as a listening family, and at times like this, I really see the value to that, where each one can take their skills and contribute and help everybody. All of us at some point are kind of going through this together, whether you're on the counseling side and you're trying to kind of stay abreast of all the news and trends, or you're a parent, and you're just trying to do your best to be an educated citizen and shepherd your student along, or you're a student and you're trying to process information. But it meant a lot to me when you reached out and said that you'd be willing to come on here. Of course, you said come on and answer a question. You didn't know I was going to turn it into an interview. That's
fine. No, I'm happy to. And it's a great time. I love talking about this topic. And I also, I am really interested in trying to share what I've learned over my course of my career as well.
Well, thank you once again, and wish you all the best.
Thanks.
On Thursday's episode, Vince and I discuss two topics with some depth. We talk about a Columbus Dispatch article entitled, Miami University Considers Cutting 18 Majors in the Face of Low Enrollment by Aaron Glynn. And we also take on the question, if a student has a slight dip in their grades from the fall of 11th to the spring of 11th, should they still apply early action? Or should they wait and apply regular decision and hope for their grades to go up in the first semester of 12th? It's a very tough question that I'm sometimes asked. So Vince and I discuss that as well as talk about the Columbus Dispatch article, and we'll run that. It's a 60-minute session Vince and I did, so we'll run 30 minutes on this Thursday and 30 minutes the following Thursday. Our question from a listener, Damien asks a great question about a student who had a grade dip due to learning differences, and he wants to know whether the student should reveal the learning differences to colleges, and he also wants to know whether revealing the learning differences makes the student dead on arrival for highly rejective colleges. Susan and Lisa tackle this SpeakPipe question head on. Our interview will be the final segment with Rick Clark, the AVP at Georgia Tech, and Brennan Barnard, Director of Admission at Khan Labs, and they're talking about some of the hot topics in college admissions these days. And it'll be our final segment of Lisa recounting her recent visit to the University of Dayton with Linda for our college spotlight. And friends, I'm going to start a new thing with you just for, next 15 or so weeks, where I'm going to read a quote to you, particularly on the personal statement. So I found 15 quotes from 15 different admission officers on the personal statement. It came from a website called The Admissions Game. And so I'm just going to read them to you. I like some more than others, but you never know what will resonate with each person. So I'm going to start with a quote from Marcia Landsman, Associate Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Yale. And she says this: most admission officers will tell you that the personal statement is their favorite part of the application. It's really a chance for us to get to know who you are. It's really your major opportunity to speak up for yourself. It's your chance to say, hello, this is me, and here's what matters to me, and here's what I'd like to tell you about myself. Friends, see you on Thursday. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us, and you'll get every single episode as soon as it is released. If you're interested, there are a few ways you can really support our podcast. You can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can help us pay our staff and our expenses by donating on our website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. I'm the producer of the podcast, but we have a fantastic team of 15. Shout out to our co-host, Dr. Lisa Ruff, Dr. David Williams, Linda Depker, Susan Tree, Vince Garcia, and Julia Esquivel. And to our substitute co-host, Sylvia Borgo. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs are from Kimberly Blass. Lily Parikh manages our Instagram. Our image editor is Talha Khan. Joy Stucker does our website episode updates. And our webmaster is Stalianos Dimitriou. And if you want to have a coaching session with Lisa, Linda, or me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you have a question you want us to answer, or if you have a recommended resource or article you think we should discuss, just send it to questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. Our favorite method is for you to record your own voice at speakpipe.com/YCBK. By the way, check out our website, where you'll find lots of content that is not on any podcast app. Our website is yourcollegeboundkid.com. If you want to learn about other hot admissions topics, follow us on Twitter at YCBK Podcast. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting again with you every single Monday and Thursday.